The great hall of Orbital Station Helix 7 was filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Ambassadors, admirals, and war leaders from 12 different star systems had gathered for the annual Coalition Fleet Review. It was the most important military event of the year. Every species wanted to show their power. Admiral Park Jinnah stood quietly on the bridge of her ship, watching the ceremony through the main. She was a woman in her 50s with gray hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles. Her uniform was simple and clean. She did not care for medals or ribbons. Outside, the alien warships moved past the viewing platforms like dancers at a grand ball. The cruisers came first. They were beautiful ships, long and curved, with engines that burned bright blue. The crowd of diplomats clapped politely. Next came the swarm carriers. There were insect-like beings, and their ships looked like giant hives made of black metal. They moved in perfect formation, hundreds of small fighters flying around the mother ships like bees. The reptilians showed their new stealth destroyers. These ships could become almost invisible, appearing and disappearing like ghosts. The commander hissed with pride as his fleet demonstrated their speed. Then it was humanity's turn. Captain stood beside Admiral Park. He was a young man, barely 30, with sharp features and quick eyes. He was the best tactician in the human fleet, and everyone knew he would become an admiral someday. Right now, he looked nervous. "Admiral," he said quietly, "perhaps we should have sent a different ship." Park did not look at him. "This is our best ship, Captain. Why would we send anything else?" The HSS moved slowly into view, very slowly. It was enormous. The ship was nearly 3 times bigger than any other vessel at the review. Its hull was thick and gray, covered in heavy armor plates. There were no elegant curves or beautiful lines. It looked like a giant metal box with engines attached to the back. Those engines groaned and rumbled as the ship crawled forward. The crowd fell silent, then someone laughed. It was a consul, a tall being with silver skin and large black eyes. His name was, and he was known for his sharp tongue. "What is that?" he asked loudly. "A cargo ship. Did the humans get lost?" More laughter spread through the crowd. The hive speaker made clicking sounds that translated as mockery. Even who were supposed to be humanity's allies, looked embarrassed. On the bridge of the chief engineer, Bora slammed her hand on her console. She was a small woman with messy hair and oil stains on her uniform. Her temper was famous throughout the fleet. "Those arrogant insects," she growled. "They have no idea what this ship can do." "Quiet, Bora," Park said calmly. The insults continued. Ambassador broadcast his voice across all channels so everyone could hear. "I have seen faster asteroids," he said. "The humans have brought a floating coffin to our fleet review. Perhaps they plan to surrender inside it." The alien delegates laughed again. Some of them did not even try to hide their contempt. Lieutenant, the young weapons officer, gripped her armrest tightly. She was fresh from the academy, eager to prove herself. This was her first major assignment, and she had dreamed of showing the galaxy what humans could do. Instead, she was watching her species become a joke. "Admiral," she said, her voice tight with anger, "should we respond?" Park finally turned from her expression was completely calm like a still lake. "No," she said simply, "let them laugh." "But Admiral—" "Speed is not everything, Lieutenant." Park looked at her young officer with something like patience. "Remember that." The Coalition Command made their decision quickly. There was a sign to rear guard duty. This meant patrol routes at the edge of civilized space, far from anything important. It was garbage work. Guard duty for empty stations and forgotten outposts. Everyone understood the message. The humans and their slow, ugly ship were not welcome among the real warriors. Captain received the orders with a stiff face. "Rear guard duty," he said quietly to Park after the ceremony ended. "They are punishing us for existing." "They are underestimating us," Park replied. "There is a difference." They departed from Helix 7 that night. No other ships came to see them off. The great alien fleets were too busy celebrating their own glory. The human vessel lumbered away into the darkness of space, alone and forgotten. In her private quarters, Admiral Park sat at her desk and opened a classified file on her personal terminal. The screen glowed in the dim room. The file header read, Project Mountain Phase 1 complete. She studied the data for a long time. Charts and numbers filled the screen. Weapons specifications, armor ratings, endurance projections, everything the Coalition did not know about her ship. A small smile touched her lips. It was the first time she had smiled all day. The galaxy thought there was a joke, a slow, clumsy embarrassment. They saw its speed and thought they understood everything. They were wrong. Humans had learned many lessons in their long history. They had fought wars on frozen mountains and burning deserts. They had survived plagues and famines and disasters that should have destroyed them. And they had learned one truth above all others. The race does not always go to the swift. Sometimes, victory belongs to those who simply refuse to fall. Admiral Park closed the file and leaned back in her chair. Outside her window, the stars stretched endlessly into the void. Let them laugh, she thought, they will learn. 6 months passed slowly on the edge of civilized space. They traveled from one forgotten outpost to another, running supply convoys and patrol routes that no other ship wanted. The crew grew restless. Some of them began to wonder if they would ever see real action. Lieutenant spent her nights in the weapons bay, running combat simulations by herself. The targeting systems on them were unlike anything in the Coalition fleet. She did not fully understand them yet, but she was learning. She fired simulated rounds at imaginary enemies until her eyes burned from staring at screens. One night, Captain found her there. "You should sleep," he said. "I will sleep when we have something to do, sir." Did not look up from her console. Real work, not this babysitting duty. Understood her frustration. He felt it too, but he had served with Admiral Park for 5 years. He knew she did nothing without reason. "Patience," he told the young lieutenant. "Our time will come." It came 3 days later. The distress signal arrived at 300 hours, cutting through the silence of the night watch. A mining colony on the planet 4 was under attack. The message was broken and desperate, screaming voices, explosions in the background, then silence. Admiral Park was on the bridge within minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket. "Report," she ordered. His face was grim. 3 raider cruisers hit the colony without warning. They have overwhelmed the local defense forces. Estimated civilian population is 12,000. They were feared across the galaxy. They were a brutal species that lived by raiding and slavery. Their ships were fast and deadly, armed with plasma lances that could cut through armor like hot knives through butter. When they came, people died or became slaves. There was no other option. "Where is the nearest Coalition response fleet?" Park asked. 2 days away, Admiral." Park looked at the star map. There was 4 hours from 4. 4 hours was a long time when people were dying. Saw her expression and spoke carefully. "Admiral, standard doctrine says we should wait for reinforcements. 3 cruisers are faster than us, more maneuverable. If we engage alone, we will be at a serious disadvantage." "Those are civilians down there, Captain." Park's voice was quiet but firm. 12,000 people, families, children. "I understand, but the odds are not your concern." Park turned to face her crew. Every officer on the bridge was watching her. "We go now, all hands to battle stations." The engines groaned as the ship changed course. Even at maximum speed, the journey took 4 hours. 4 hours of waiting. 4 hours of wondering what they would find. They found hell. 4 was burning when they arrived. Smoke rose from the colony buildings. Landing craft sat on the surface like metal insects, loading captured civilians into their cargo holds. In orbit, 3 cruisers circled like sharks. They detected the human ship immediately. Their scanners read the signature and their commander recognized it. This was the slow human ship from the Coalition broadcasts. The joke, the floating coffin. The commander opened a communication channel. His face appeared on this. He was a massive creature with gray skin and yellow eyes, his mouth full of sharp teeth. "Go home, metal turtle," he growled. "This is not your fight. We have no quarrel with humans today." Admiral Park did not respond to him. Instead, she spoke to her crew. "Bora, status report." Engineer Bora grinned from her station. Her fingers danced across her console. "All systems ready, Admiral. The mountain is awake." "Lieutenant, weapons free." Felt her heart pounding. This was it. This was real. Targeting solutions locked, Admiral. Park looked at the one last time. The commander was still laughing at them. "Fire," she said. The main batteries erupted. The galaxy knew about plasma lances and particle beams. They knew about elegant weapons that burned bright and beautiful. The humans did not use those weapons. They carried massive electromagnetic cannons that threw solid tungsten slugs at a fraction of the speed of light. There was no flash, no glow, just physics. The first cruiser simply stopped existing. The tungsten round punched through its bow and exited through its stern, leaving a hole big enough to fly a shuttle through. The ship broke apart in seconds, spilling debris and bodies into the void. The commander's laughter died in his throat. The second cruiser fired its plasma lances at the beams struck the human ship's hull with enough power to melt through any vessel in the Coalition fleet. They barely noticed. Its armor was something new, layers of metamaterials and reactive plating and something the humans called ablative honeycomb. The plasma splashed against the hull like water against stone. The surface glowed red, then cooled. That was all. The second ship tried to run. It was faster than it should have escaped easily. But the human ship's hangars opened, and a swarm of drones poured out like angry hornets. The small machines were fast, very fast. They caught the fleeing cruiser in 3 minutes and tore it apart with concentrated fire. The third ship surrendered. On the surface of 4, the landing parties saw what happened to their fleet. They abandoned their prisoners and fled to their remaining shuttles. Most of them did not make it. The precise guns picked them off as they tried to escape. When it was over, Admiral Park allowed herself to breathe. The battle had lasted 11 minutes, 3 enemy cruisers destroyed, 12,000 civilians saved. They had taken no serious damage. The colonists emerged from hiding. They looked up at the sky where the ugly human ship orbited like a guardian angel. Many of them wept with gratitude. Back on the bridge, Captain stared at his tactical display in amazement. "Admiral," he said slowly, "I think I understand now." Park nodded. "Speed wins battles, Captain, but we did not build this ship to win battles." "Then what did you build it for?" The Admiral looked at the planet below, where families were reuniting and children were crying with relief. "We built it to protect people," she said simply. "Whatever the cost, whatever the odds, we built it to stand and never fall." The message spread across the galaxy within hours. The slow human ship had destroyed 3 raiders without breaking a sweat. The joke had teeth. The coffin was a fortress. Nobody was laughing anymore. The news of the battle at 4 traveled faster than any ship. Within days, every species in the Coalition was talking about the slow human warship that had destroyed 3 cruisers in 11 minutes. The story grew with each telling. Some said the human ship was indestructible. Others claimed it carried weapons that could crack moons. The alien powers did not know what to think. The consulate demanded answers. Ambassador, the same official who had called the floating coffin, sent an angry message to Coalition High Command. "The humans deceived us," he wrote. "They hid their true capabilities. This is a violation of Coalition trust." The Hive grew paranoid. Their hive mind analyzed the battle data and calculated frightening possibilities. If humans could build one ship like this, they could build more. They began moving their swarm fleets closer to human space, watching and waiting. Only they reacted differently. Their people on 4 owed their lives to the Council sent a formal message of gratitude to Earth. More importantly, merchant ships began quietly requesting human escorts for their convoys. They had seen what human protection was worth. Admiral Park was summoned to Coalition High Command. The journey took 2 weeks. Captain accompanied her, leaving Lieutenant in temporary command of the young weapons officer felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She spent sleepless nights walking the corridors of the ship, checking systems, talking to crew members, trying to be ready for anything. On the station called Central Point, Admiral Park faced a tribunal of alien admirals. They sat in a semicircle above her, looking down from elevated platforms. Their faces showed a mixture of fear and anger. "You deceived the Coalition," Consul accused. His silver face was tight with fury. "You made us believe your ship was weak." Park stood alone in the center of the chamber. Her voice was calm and steady. "We built a ship," she replied. "You looked at it and assumed it was weak because it was slow. That assumption was yours, not ours. You hid your weapons capabilities. We demonstrated our weapons at the fleet review. You chose not to pay attention. You were too busy laughing." A admiral clicked angrily. "This is dangerous provocation. Humans cannot be trusted." "We saved 12,000 civilians," Park said. "The Coalition fleet was 2 days away. We were 4 hours away. We acted. You did not." The tribunal could not find grounds for formal punishment. Humanity had broken no laws or treaties, but the political damage was done. When Park and left Central Point, they knew that humanity had gained new enemies along with new respect. During the journey back to the long-range sensors detected something troubling. Captain studied the data with growing concern. "Admiral," he said quietly, "deep space probes are picking up a massive energy signature at the galactic rim. Hundreds of ships, moving toward Coalition space." Park looked at the readings. Her expression did not change, but her hands tightened slightly on the armrests of her chair. "Almost certainly. This is not a raiding party. This is a full invasion fleet." The Dominion had responded to their defeat at 4. Their warlord, a brutal commander named the Unbroken, had gathered every ship under his command. 200 warships, enough firepower to burn entire worlds. Broadcast his intentions openly. His message reached every corner of Coalition space. "The humans have humiliated my people," his harsh voice declared. "They will pay with blood. Every human world will burn. Every human will become a slave, and any species that stands with them will share their fate." Panic spread through the Coalition. They immediately their fleets to protect their home systems. They offered excuses about defensive positioning, but everyone understood the truth. They were afraid. They hesitated, their hive mind calculating costs and benefits. They stood firm, but their military was small. They could not stop the invasion alone. Coalition Command sent a desperate message to Earth. They needed time to gather their scattered forces, time to organize a proper defense. But the fleet was moving fast, and the only force in position to slow them down was the one ship against 200. Admiral Park received the request in her quarters. Captain stood beside her as she read the message. His face was pale. "They are asking us to die," he said. "This is a suicide mission." Park was silent for a long moment. She thought about her crew. Bora, who had a mother waiting for her on Earth, so young and full of fire. Himself, who deserved to live long enough to become the admiral everyone knew he could be. She thought about the 12,000 people they had saved at 4. She thought about all the other colonies and stations that stood in this path. Millions of lives. "We will not die," she finally said. "We will hold." She opened a ship-wide communication channel. Her voice echoed through every corridor and compartment of the. "This is Admiral Park. By now you have heard about the invasion fleet. 200 warships are coming to destroy everything we love. The coalition needs time to respond. They have asked us to buy that time." She paused. The ship was completely silent. "I will not lie to you. This will be the hardest thing we have ever done. Some of us will not survive, but I believe in this ship. I believe in this crew. And I believe that when humans stand together, nothing in this galaxy can break us." In the engine room, Bora wiped her eyes and put her hand on the reactor housing. "You heard her, old girl," she whispered to the ship. "Time to show them what we are made of." On the bridge, Lieutenant straightened in her chair. Her fear was still there, but something stronger burned alongside it. Pride, purpose, the knowledge that she was exactly where she needed to be. Captain looked at Admiral Park. "Orders, Admiral." Park allowed herself a small, grim smile. "Set course for Orion's Gate, maximum speed." The engines roared to life. The ship that everyone had laughed at began its journey toward the greatest battle in human history. Orion's Gate was a narrow passage through a vast nebula of swirling gas and electromagnetic storms. Any fleet trying to reach coalition space from the galactic rim had to pass through it. There was no other way. Admiral Park had chosen her battlefield carefully. They took position at the narrowest point of the passage. Here, the nebula walls pressed close on either side. Enemy ships could not spread out or surround them. They could only come straight ahead, a few at a time. "Perfect," Captain said quietly as he studied the tactical display. "They have numbers. We have geography." Engineer Bora had spent the entire journey preparing the ship. Every system was checked twice. Every weapon was loaded. Every piece of armor was reinforced. They had never been in better condition. "She is ready," Bora reported from the engine room. "Whatever comes, she will hold." The waiting was the hardest part. The crew had 8 hours before the fleet arrived. Some of them wrote letters to their families. Some prayed. Some sat in silence, thinking about everything they might never see again. Lieutenant walked through the ship, checking on her weapons teams. They were scared. She could see it in their eyes, but they were also determined. They had trained for this. They were ready. "Remember," she told them, "every shot counts. Every enemy we destroy is one less ship threatening our homes. Make them pay for every meter they advance." When the fleet finally appeared on sensors, it looked like a storm of metal and fire. 200 warships poured into the nebula passage, their engines burning bright against the swirling gas clouds. Warlord's flagship led the formation, a massive vessel covered in scars from countless battles. Opened a communication channel. His yellow eyes burned with hatred. "Little human ship," he growled. "You think you can stop the Dominion, you will die screaming." Admiral Park did not bother to respond. "All stations," she said calmly, "commence firing." The first wave attacked with 30 ships. They charged forward, confident in their numbers. The spoke, and 3 ships died in the first 10 seconds. Tungsten rounds tore through armor and hulls like paper. The returned fire with plasma lances. The beams struck the hull and splashed harmlessly against the layered armor. For 3 hours the pattern continued. They attacked, they destroyed them, more came, more died. The nebula passage filled with wreckage and bodies. But the human ship was not invincible. By the 4th hour, damage was accumulating. A plasma lance had breached the outer hull on Deck 7. Coolant was leaking from the port engine. 3 crew members were dead, and 12 more were wounded. Bora worked miracles in the engine room. She sealed breaches with emergency foam. She rerouted power from damaged systems. She kept the ship fighting when any other vessel would have already surrendered. "Come on, old girl," she whispered as she welded a cracked power conduit. "Just a little longer. You can do this." Warlord grew frustrated. His fleet was dying, but the human ship refused to fall. He changed tactics. Smaller, faster ships began slipping through the edges of the nebula, trying to flank this position. "Drone swarms launch," Captain ordered. This hangars opened, and hundreds of autonomous drones poured out like angry hornets. They hunted the flanking ships through the nebula clouds, fighting a brutal war in the swirling gas. Explosions lit up the darkness as drone and fighter destroyed each other. By the ninth hour, the main batteries were running low on ammunition. Each tungsten round was precious now. Lieutenants switched to energy weapons. They were weaker, but they did not run out. "Make every shot count," she reminded her gunners. Their hands were steady on the controls. They had been fighting for 9 hours straight. They were exhausted, but they did not stop. Hour 12 brought a new horror. Boarding pods launched from the attacking ships. They were small and fast, designed to attach to enemy hulls and cut through the armor. A dozen of them latched onto the before the point defense guns could destroy them. Alarms screamed through the ship. Warriors poured through the breaches, their weapons blazing. Lieutenant grabbed a rifle and led a security team to meet them. The fighting in the corridors was savage. They were huge and brutal, but the humans were defending their home. Killed her first enemy with a shot through its chest. The second one nearly took her head off before a crewman saved her life. She kept fighting, room by room, corridor by corridor, pushing the invaders back. A blade caught her shoulder. Blood soaked her uniform. She did not stop. "Medical team to Deck 4, someone called over the radio. "Negative," replied through gritted teeth. "I am not leaving, keep fighting." By hour 16, the boarding parties had been eliminated. 47 crew members were dead. The corridors were painted with blood, both human and alien, but the still stood. Warlord had finally had enough. His flagship pushed forward, leading one final assault. The massive vessel exchanged fire with the at point-blank range. Both ships shuddered under the impacts. Both ships bled fire and debris. Admiral Park watched her damage displays turn red. The outer armor was failing. The main power core was at critical levels. They had one shot left, maybe two. "Bora," she said into the intercom, "I need everything. All remaining power to the main batteries." In the engine room, Bora's hands flew across the controls. "You will get it, Admiral, even if I have to push the reactor myself." The lights dimmed throughout the ship as power was redirected. Life support dropped to minimum. Gravity weakened, but the charge to maximum. "Target the enemy flagship," Park ordered. "Fire." The shot was perfect. The tungsten round punched through's bridge. The warlord died instantly, along with his entire command staff. His flagship broke apart, its reactor exploding in a ball of white fire. The fleet saw their leader die. They saw 63 of their ships reduced to wreckage. They saw the human vessel still standing, battered and broken but refusing to fall. They ran. The surviving ships turned and fled back into the depths of space. The invasion was over. On the bridge of the Admiral Park sat in her command chair. Her arm was broken. Shrapnel wounds covered her face and hands. Around her, the bridge crew slumped at their stations, too exhausted to move. Captain looked at the tactical display. It showed empty space where an enemy fleet had been. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Park did not smile. She was looking at a different screen. The casualty list. 47 names, 47 people who would never go home. Engineer Bora found her there an hour later, sitting alone in the ruined bridge. "Was it worth it?" Bora asked quietly. The Admiral was silent for a long time. Then she spoke, her voice heavy with grief and pride. "Ask me when the Coalition fleet arrives." The Coalition fleet arrived 3 days later. 200 ships from a dozen species jumped into the Orion's gate system, ready for battle. They expected to find wreckage. They expected to find the scattered remains of a human ship that had bought them time with its death. Instead, they found the human vessel floated at the center of a field of debris. 63 destroyed warships surrounded it like fallen enemies around a wounded warrior. The hull was blackened. Half the ship was open to vacuum, sealed only by emergency barriers. Its engines were dark, its weapons silent. But it was still there, still standing, still alive. The rescue teams that boarded the ship moved through the corridors in shocked silence. They saw the battle damage. They saw the blood on the walls. They saw exhausted humans who had not slept in 3 days, still at their posts, still watching for enemies that were no longer coming. Admiral was on one of the first rescue shuttles. He walked through the corridors with his silver face frozen in disbelief. He had called this ship a floating coffin. He had laughed at its slow engines and ugly hull. Now he understood how wrong he had been. He found Admiral Park in the medical bay, getting her broken arm treated. She looked up when he entered but did not stand. "Consul," she said. Her voice was flat with exhaustion. Was silent for a long moment. Then he did something no had ever done before. He bowed his head to a human. "Admiral Park," he said formally, "on behalf of the consulate I offer our deepest apologies. We judged your ship by its appearance. We judged your people by our own standards. We were fools." Park studied him for a moment, then she nodded. Apology accepted. The news of the battle spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species heard the story. 1 human ship against 200 warships, 17 hours of continuous combat, 63 enemy vessels destroyed, Warlord the Unbroken killed. The political landscape shifted overnight. The consulate formally requested a military alliance with Earth. They wanted to learn from humans, to understand how they had built such a ship, how they had found the courage to face such impossible odds. The Hive sent a delegation of their best engineers to study human ship design. Not to steal secrets, they insisted, but to learn. The humans agreed, and for the first time, human engineers worked side by side. The council held a special ceremony. They declared Admiral Park a shield friend, their highest honor for Anon. It meant that any who met her was obligated to protect her with their own life. Park accepted the honor with quiet grace. The crew of the became heroes throughout Coalition space. Their names were known on 100 worlds. Lieutenant received a medal for her defense against the boarding parties. The scar on her shoulder became a mark of pride. She was promoted and offered positions on a dozen different ships. She turned them all down. "My place is here," she said simply. Engineer Bora was offered jobs at the finest shipyards in the galaxy. Species who had never met a human wanted her to design ships for them. She refused every offer. "Someone has to keep this old girl flying," she said, patting the hull. "She and I have been through too much together." Captain was given his own command. His new ship was called the HSS, the second vessel of humanity's mountain-class line. It was bigger than with even heavier armor and more powerful weapons. Accepted the command with pride, though he admitted he would miss serving under Admiral Park. The Admiral herself faced one final tribunal at Coalition High Command. But this time, it was not for punishment. The assembled admirals wanted to honor her. More importantly, they wanted to understand. The Coalition High Admiral, an ancient with scales and wise eyes, asked her a question that had troubled all of them. "Admiral Park," he said, "why did you build the way you did? Every other species chooses speed, maneuverability, the ability to strike and retreat. Why did you choose slowness?" Park stood before them in her simple uniform. Her arm was still in a healing brace. Her face still showed the marks of battle, but her eyes were clear and calm. "Speed wins battles," she said. "Every species knows this. Every species builds their fleets around this principle, but humans have a different philosophy." She paused, looking at the assembled aliens, and a dozen other species, all watching her with complete attention. "We have fought many wars," Park continued. "Not always against enemies we could outrun. Sometimes we faced winters that lasted for months, enemies who outnumbered us 10 to 1, disasters that seemed impossible to survive, and we learned something from those experiences. She straightened her shoulders, and her voice carried through the entire chamber. Speed wins battles. Endurance wins wars. The race does not always go to the swift. Sometimes victory belongs to those who simply refuse to fall. The chamber was silent. Then slowly, the assembled admirals began to applaud. It started with the High Admiral and spread until the entire room was filled with the sound. 1 year later, a new coalition fleet assembled for review. At its center flew 3 human mountain-class fortresses, the fully repaired and upgraded, the under captain's command, and a third ship, the HSS, still fresh from the shipyards. Around them flew vessels from every species in the coalition, cruisers and swarm carriers and destroyers, all forming up in perfect formation. The humans were no longer at the edge of the fleet. They were at its heart. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of watching the formation come together. Beside her, Captain had come aboard for a visit. He watched the alien ships take their positions around the human vessels. They are not laughing anymore, he observed quietly. Park allowed herself a rare smile. After everything they had been through, after all the loss and pain and sacrifice, they had earned this moment. No, she agreed, they are not. Outside the fleet of a united galaxy moved forward together. The slow human warships led the way, their engines rumbling steadily, their armor gleaming in the starlight. They had started as a joke, a laughingstock, a floating coffin that every species had mocked and dismissed. Now they were the mountain that the galaxy stood behind, the shield that protected 100 worlds, the proof that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply refuse to give up. Admiral Park looked at the stars stretching endlessly before her ship. "All ahead standard," she ordered. They moved forward, slow and steady and absolutely unstoppable. Humanity had found its place among the stars.